Welcome to Brain Recall. The Transfer of Property Act, 1882, TPA, is one of the most important legislations governing the transfer of immovable property in India. The Act was introduced to bring uniformity, certainty, and legality in transactions relating to immovable property. The Act regulates transfers between living persons, meaning transfers made inter vivos. It does not deal with transfers made through inheritance or wills, which are governed by succession laws. The TPA lays down principles regarding rights, duties, and liabilities of parties involved in property transactions. Section 5 of the Transfer of Property Act defines transfer of property as an act by which a living person conveys property, in present or in future, to one or more other living persons. Living persons include individuals, companies, associations, and bodies of persons. The Act applies only to transfers made between living persons, also known as transfers inter vivos. The Transfer of Property Act applies to the transfer of immovable property such as land, buildings, and rights attached to land. It does not apply to transfers made by operation of law, such as inheritance, succession, insolvency, or court decrees. The Act extends to the whole of India, but certain agricultural lands are governed by state-specific laws and local customs. Property under the Act is broadly classified into movable and immovable property. Movable property includes items like money, goods, and personal belongings. Immovable property includes land, buildings, benefits arising out of land, and things attached to the earth. The Transfer of Property Act mainly focuses on immovable property and lays down rules for its lawful transfer. According to Section 7, a person who is competent to contract and entitled to transferable property can transfer property. The transferor must be a major, of sound mind, and must have legal authority over the property. Minors, persons of unsound mind, or persons legally disqualified are not competent to transfer property under this Act. The Act imposes certain restrictions on the transfer of property to protect public interest. Transfers made for unlawful purposes, fraudulent intentions, or with absolute restraint on alienation are void. Transfer of property to an unborn person without creating a prior interest is also restricted. These conditions ensure that property rights are exercised in a lawful and fair manner. The Act recognizes different kinds of property transfers such as sale, mortgage, lease, exchange, and gift. Each type of transfer has specific legal requirements and conditions. For example, sale involves transfer of ownership for a price, while a lease transfers the right to enjoy property for a certain time. These provisions ensure clarity and legality in transactions. The doctrine of election, provided under Section 35, means that a person cannot accept and reject the same instrument. If a transfer gives a benefit to a person but also affects their existing rights, that person must choose either to accept the benefit or retain their original rights. This doctrine is based on the principle of fairness and consistency. Section 53A introduces the doctrine of part performance, which protects the rights of a transferee. If a transferee has taken possession of property and performed their part of the contract, the transferor cannot evict them even if the transfer is not completed through registration. This doctrine prevents fraud and ensures justice in contractual property transactions. Modes of transfer under TPA. 1. Sale. Section 54. Sale is a transfer of ownership of immovable property in exchange for a price paid or promised. The price must be in money. For tangible immovable property worth more than 100 rupees, sale must be made through a registered instrument. 2. Mortgage. Sections 58 to 104. Mortgage is a transfer of an interest in immovable property as security for the repayment of a loan, debt, or performance of an obligation. Ownership is not transferred, only a limited interest is created in favor of the mortgagee. 3. Lease. Section 105. Lease is a transfer of the right to enjoy a movable property for a certain time, in consideration of rent or premium. Ownership remains with the lessor, while possession and enjoyment are given to the lessee. 4. Exchange. Section 118. Exchange is a transfer where two persons mutually transfer ownership of one property for another. It is similar to sale, but instead of money, another property is given as consideration. 5. Gift. Section 122. Gift is the voluntary transfer of property without consideration. It must be made by a registered instrument and accepted by the donee during the lifetime of the donor. Gifts can be of movable or immovable property. Conclusion. The modes of transfer under the Transfer of Property Act, 1882 provide a clear and structured framework for transferring property rights in India. By recognizing sale, mortgage, lease, exchange, and gift, the Act ensures that property transactions are carried out legally and systematically. Each mode has specific rules to protect the interests of both parties and prevent disputes. Thus, these provisions promote transparency, certainty, and fairness in property dealings. Thank you. Subscribe for more.